In 1989 was the craziest bust I was ever involved with. I was cruising down I-10 East, headed towards Tampa. It was a Friday night around 2 in the morning. I'm driving a 1983 280ZX, stick shift, of course. And I'm carrying about 6,000 pills of ecstasy. It was the white double dones. And anyway, the state trooper pulls me over like an asshole. I'm all fucked up. I'm on like Percodans. I'm doing over 100 miles an hour. I don't have like a phone number to call this guy, tell him I'm running late, that I'm meeting. So I'm like trying to make up time, and I get pulled over by this Mississippi state trooper named Ted Boyd. And anyway, I'm showing my license, my insurance, my registration. And he says, "Do you have any weapons or drugs in the car?" I'm like, "No, sir." He goes, "You don't mind if I take a look?" And I'm like, "No, go help yourself." So he takes a look in the car, doesn't find anything. He goes, "You don't mind popping the trunk?" So I pop the trunk. He goes in the back, he searches, really doesn't find anything. As he's writing my ticket for speeding, he goes, "Let me take a look one more place." So he looks in my ashtray, and he finds a roach. And when he finds this roach, he decides he wants to like tear the car apart. So he starts tearing the car apart, and the pills were way up in my seat, my driver's seat. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat, he's sitting in the driver's seat, and he pulls out the whole bag of pills and he goes, "What are these?" And right when he says, "What are these?" I grab the pills out of his hand, and at that point he clinches, and like the bag breaks and like a few pills fall in the car. I immediately take off into the woods. I hurdle a barbed wire fence. At the time, I had brand new Air Jordans on. I had a pair of shorts on with no underwear and a white beater. The shorts get ripped, and anyway, like I'm in the pitch black darkness of the Mississippi woods, trying to get rid of 6,000 hits of ecstasy. After about 15 minutes, I realize I'm fucked, you know? I'm like, I don't really have any like, you know, survival tactics. I'm not exactly Rambo in the woods. So let's cross the street here. So when I'm way deep in the woods, and all of a sudden I see like all these lights, like they must have like 10 squad cars at the time. And they come on the megaphone and they go, "We're letting out the K9 units." And at this point, I'm ready to surrender. So I come out the woods, no underwear, no shorts. My shorts got ripped on the barbed wire. I come out with my hands up, and the cops, I mean, they just jump me, man. They go, "Get on the ground." So I get on the ground, spread eagle. They stomp my back. They pick my fucking arms up, they handcuff me and hit me with the black flashlight. I mean, I came around like the next morning, I was like fucked up. I mean, I was loaded on Percodan. I get knocked out by a flashlight, and I'm in the Gulfport jail. And this brother tells me, "Man, you made the front page of the paper, man." And it was like a hero story for Ted Boyd, how he ran down a Louisiana drug dealer in the woods. I went to prison. I had a going away party at my mom's house. And wow, it was at a fiasco. I'll never forget, man, and people still remind me, it's probably the worst case of parental abuse you could ever imagine. My father, who's, you know, a nice guy, he really wasn't never abusive, you know, but anyway, this one night, he just wouldn't let up on me, you know, reminded me of all my failures and shortcomings, and how did my life get to this point where I'm getting ready to go to a federal correctional institution, and stuff like that. And he's having martinis, and everybody's kind of like, it's like pretty much an upbeat atmosphere, except that I'm getting kicked around a little bit, you know? And at the time, I was on some heavy-duty sleeping aids called Halcyons, self-prescribed, obviously. And I went in my bedroom, and I crushed up like 3 of them. And I went back in the den where everybody was, and I was like, Dad, let me have a sip of your martini. And if you know my dad, he makes like big drinks. So like, I get the glass, and I have a sip, and I throw in the Halcyons crushed up. Well, about 20 minutes later, we ready to go out to dinner, and my dad's finishing up that big martini, and I mean, there's nothing left in the glass. I mean, he was literally polishing the ice cubes and spitting them back in the glass. So we get to this little seafood restaurant on Veterans Boulevard named Mr. Bill's. They specialize in like shrimp po' boys, fried oysters, seafood platters, and gumbo. You know, like a typical neighborhood New Orleans restaurant. So the waitress brings him a beer. Boom. He knocks over the beer before he takes even his first sip. Then my mom's like, kind of like a little suspicious, looks over at him like, you know, this guy's pretty loaded. The waitress brings him another beer. Boom, knocks that one over. Now at this point, everybody at the table's like, Wilton, you can't hold your alcohol? And I'm looking at him like, yeah, Wilton, you can't hold your alcohol? And his eyes are getting like real heavy, you know, like he's really fighting it, like trying to like stay awake. And I know like there's no way anybody can fight this unless like, you know, you're on like some type of serious speed maybe. And even then it's like not even a fight. So he's looking over at me at the table and he's going, his eyes are like this and I'm like, bye bye. And they bring his gumbo and he's like, at this point, like, really, he just crashes into the gumbo. I mean, his face goes right into the plate of gumbo. And at this point, my mom is pissed. I mean, they like wiping him off with napkins and he's like in the chair, like rubbernecking. And, but we finally get through dinner and my Uncle Davis, who was still alive at the time, has got one shoulder. I got one shoulder, and we get him out to the car, which is a Coupe de Ville, which is a 2-door Cadillac. And my mom takes off her shoe, and she's beating him. And I'm like hitting him with some gut shots, you know, a couple of hooks to the gut, and trying to get him, and kicking him in his behind, trying to get him in the car. Gut shots, you know. Night at like 11 o'clock, 10:30, and it's 9 we finally get him home. He sleeps all get him in the guest bed till the next day. Just hear the snoring. And I got up to go to the restroom, like shaking. I guess about snoring. 6 o'clock. And this is a guy that checked on him to make sure he was still alive, you know, because like the snoring had kind of subsided a little bit, but anyway, it became like a popular story to tell, like at family gatherings, how Wilton got all loaded. Well, about 5 years after it happened, I finally came clean with everybody and let them in on the secret because I was the only one that knew what happened. And, you know, since he didn't get seriously hurt and stuff, and it kind of like, I felt like I had to share it with somebody. My bed at Fort Worth, Texas. I was working in the kitchen, basically a cook or whatever, and it was Thanksgiving night, 1991, and we boiling all these turkeys. And I mean, we literally boiled about 90 turkeys, and at the end of my shift, I took about 50 turkey necks out of the boiler, and I put them in this hefty sack. And what I planned on doing was bringing them back to the unit, which I slept in, and I was going to sell them to all the brothers down there because that's really like a delicacy for blacks in the South, turkey necks. You know, it kind of goes along with all the other things, you know. So I'm walking across the compound with this hefty bag and just kind of cruising along and, you know, clipping, basically. This is back when Fort Worth didn't have controlled movement. I get stopped by this guard. He yells at me, "Hey, freeze!" So I freeze. I stand there, and he's like, "What do you have in the bag?" And I'm like, "Well, I have some turkey necks, sir." You know, because every once in a while, you know, guards are cool. They let you take a few things out of the kitchen back to the unit. He goes, "What do you plan on doing with all of these turkey necks?" And I was like, eating them, having like a, you know, little party for the boys or whatever. Well, anyway, he wasn't buying it. He fucking ended up sending me to the hole. And like, if you ever been locked up, it's actually like an arrest on the outside, you know? I literally was charged with contraband, possession of turkey necks, and thrown in the hole for 3 weeks. And the whole point was to sell these turkey necks to get out of a gambling debt. And I got out of the gambling debt anyway because they gave me a disciplinary transfer. I ended up in Sandstone, Minnesota like 2 months later.